Hey, welcome to Alive inside the Radiantly Alive Woman Facebook community. This is a women's only Facebook community where we are going live twice a week, sharing information about scars. In every one of these videos, you're going to get a specific orientation to a scar that you're interested in, specifically the physical considerations, the energetic or emotional considerations, and then maybe most importantly, what to do. What are the first steps that you can take to really start to resolve a scar? Today, we are talking about gallbladder removals and the scars that they create. This is a massive topic. And so I'm going to give you the most important points around those three considerations and action plan. And I'm going to hopefully highlight as much as I can around education around what the gallbladder does, as well as how the scar can impede on your physical and energy, and also, again, the first steps that you can do to just get started. So as you come into this live, just let me know that you're here so that I can get started. I would love a hello. Hashtag live will be also very lovely. And then if you're watching this on a replay, just hashtag replay so I know that you're watching. It's all very helpful for me to know, where we're at. So just getting my stuff out in front of me here, just in case. Sometimes I can't see messages come in on my phone, but there's like tons of messages coming in on my laptop, so I always have both now. So again, thank you for being here, and let's just jump right in. Let's talk about gallbladder removals. The first thing we're going to talk about always is the physical components, what you need to think about, the considerations physically. Now, first, if we just talk about the organ itself, the gallbladder itself, it's quite a detailed organ, but in a really simple kind of form. I want you to just be very, just acknowledge the kind of intricate connection that the gallbladder has with bile, as well as the bile ducts and the liver. These three kind of just hang out together, and they're constantly like in communication. So for whatever reason, it could be unique to each person, the gallbladder needs to be removed. There will be a hindrance between the communication because there's like a missing component there. As all of you, I'm sure, know, you can absolutely live without your gallbladder. There may be just things that you need to take into consideration as far as your diet. But I also hope that I can highlight some other things that maybe nobody has told you about as far as the physical and energy and emotions. So taking an organ out of your body is a big deal. The surgery itself is a huge deal. I know over the past few decades, they've completely modified the way that they do these surgeries. Before, they used to be like very large incisions, and depending on the surgeon, depending on the decade, the year that it was done, and depending on the healing process, those scars can look completely different. I know that I've worked with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who have gallbladder removal scars, and those scars look very different to anyone who's getting a gallbladder removed now. It's the difference between having like several inches of a scar to like 3 little ports, meaning like 3 little incisions that are very small, and they pull it out in that way. So I'm going to try to speak to both. I'm going to continually try to pulse in between both because I know the range of scarring will be different, and that can sometimes bring a significant change in how you want to approach the scar. There's also a special little point that I want to bring up. Something that over decades, or not myself, but over almost a decade of clinical experience, I've noticed that women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, the women who are in those decades of their life, they have a very unique experience with the gallbladder removal scar, and I'm going to share that as well. So like I said, I'll constantly be pulsing in between like the newer way they do gallbladder removals and the old way. So if you have any questions about either of those, if I missed something, just shout it out. Ask me a question anytime. If you're watching this on a replay, I'm super active in here, and I'll see all your questions and will respond to them as soon as I can. So when you have an organ removed, the physical thing that you need to think about is the fact that you will be now hindered in some way. There'll be some sort of impedance. Something else has to kind of pick up the slack, so to speak. So just in a physical component, thinking about the digestive system, because that's what it's most closely related and linked into, you have to be just cognizant of what you're putting in your body, the kind of food that you're putting in your body, how much you're eating, and maybe the spacing of when you're eating in your day. I want you to just take that into consideration, also with just the way that the scarring will be in your body, because sometimes if you have a very large scar and you're eating a lot of food or you bloat really easily, this can challenge the whole area as well. So that's a physical consideration I want you to think about every time you remove an organ. The same thing as when I spoke about getting part or full thyroid removals at the very beginning of this series. That's important to think about. The other massive thing that you need to think about when you have a scar on your abdomen is the fact that they have gone through all the layers of your abdominal wall to go find whatever it is that they need. Whether it was a C-section, a hysterectomy, or a gallbladder removal, they're penetrating a lot of layers of tissue. And in my experience through working with women who have scars, when you are cutting through muscles, those muscles will not return to like maximum efficiency without proper rehab. When you do proper rehab, they absolutely will. My version of proper rehab involves scar work. So if you feel like you got rehab, but you still don't feel your core, or you try yoga and Pilates and you feel like you can't quite get your core, or you continually tweak your back, or something is always like a nagging injury, it's highly likely that the abdominal muscles, particularly around the scar, but the abdominal muscles are very long. I'll show you my body in a moment. Those muscles won't be working very well. They'll be severely hindered. And when we're thinking about being, stable, solid, like integrated human beings, our arms and legs work off of a kind of a stable, solid trunk that is adaptable and that can move and is very resilient. If this kind of platform, if this foundation is off, then the way in which you move your arms and legs will be off, because they're plugged in on something that is hindered, is impeded. And so we want to think like that. And we want to regain function, obviously, in the muscle tissue. Okay, that is without a doubt one of the most important things that you can do. So just check on that idea. If you have a gallbladder removal and you do have like a nagging, like, you reach down and grab your purse and you like will pull your back, or maybe breathing, or something else is like constantly kind of nagging. It's like a low level thing. Maybe it like explodes out into something really painful and like quiets back down. Those types of things will be very likely related to the scar. Like almost always related to the scar. I'm going to forcefully say that and cut to that because it's almost always what I find. So how do we regain function of the muscle? That's like kind of the most important part, because when you can get the muscles in this area working correctly and having them just kind of unconsciously doing their thing, that provides you with a lot of strength, a lot of stability, a lot of injury prevention, and it's really good for your pressure in your body. So when you have a large abdominal scar, you are very likely experiencing a pressure problem in your body. So this I'm speaking to more of the bigger abdominal gallbladder scars. When you have a pressure problem in your body, what other things could you feel? You may have incontinence. You may feel like laughing or jumping may be disturbing your bladder. You may have something going on with your bowels, like maybe you find it hard to hold your bowels if you're out at a wedding, you can't go to the bathroom or something. You may have an issue with that. You may also have digestive problems. It's very likely that the larger the scar on the abdomen, the more chances are you'll have digestive problems, and I'll explain that in a moment. And any kind of pressure problem that you may feel with your breathing as well, like hard to like take a full inhale, like you feel like you can't. Feel like you can't really kind of, like you almost like push up into your ribs, like you can't really get it all in, get all the breath in. And any type of pressure problem in the head. Headaches, huge, and I'll explain why as well. I'm like running a huge list for myself here. Hopefully I remember all these things. Headaches are a big thing. Congestion and sinus stuff. Ears and pressure, huge. So I want you to think about, I also want you to think about integrity of joints. So joints need a correct amount of pressure as well. So I'm not necessarily talking about like little finger joints, but I am talking maybe about larger joints where they could be impacted, like your hips or your shoulder. Your ball and socket joints are pretty big, pretty massive. And so what do the muscles look like? I just spoke about the importance of having the muscle function be good to go. That's one of our highest priorities when we have scars on the abdomen, is we have muscles going in all different directions. So we have muscle tissue like going like this, also called our transverse abdominis. We got obliques. We got obliques going in like this way, and then we got them going in this way. So in a single like area, we have obliques going here, and then we also, so if I go here, and then we have them like here on top. So you have this crisscross pattern, which is incredibly efficient and like seatbelts you in and prevents injury. Then you also have your famous 8-pack that comes along longitudinally in the front. So your abdominals kind of keep you good to go for any type of vector of movement that you do. Whether you're reaching up at the cupboard, reaching back to grab your purse, whether you're filling up your belly because of food, you're bearing down, you're going to the toilet, whatever's happening, your body is making sure that you are stable. So things are healthy and are able to like flow and communicate with their neighbors and so on and so forth. So when you have a scar there, not only are you impeding just single layer, you're impeding all of those layers, and all those layers need to come back to full function. And that's what one of the main importance of the scar tissue work is. Because in my opinion, you won't get that back. You will not get full function of any muscle tissue back unless you do scar work. You may get like a good amount back. Maybe you feel like 80% of the way there, and like I said, you just have nagging stuff. Or maybe you have full-blown, you know, like there's all of these things all over your body, and you're like, I don't know why these things are happening, and my digestion's off, and I can't sleep, and like all this stuff is like like snowballing. You could very well be going through that as well. It's kind of all over the map depending on the person and however many scars they have and their whole life history and all of these other factors. So when we're talking about the physicality, I want you to keep those two things in mind, like really the organs and your digestion and how you're consuming and what foods you're consuming and how the whole digestive system works together from your, like really from your tip to your tail, like how that whole integrated unit is needing to harmonize with its neighbor, with its buddy, so that everything's working cohesively. And then the other big piece, like I said, is the muscle tissue. The muscle tissue is so big, it's a total game changer. It's the difference from feeling comfortable and safe in your body, like your body's got it, like you're feeling secure or not. And so what's interesting about abdominal scars, so again, I'm speaking more to the larger ones, but please don't discount the smaller, like port ones, as being better or maybe not as damaging, because that's not necessarily the case. We can't really make that correlation, unfortunately. But for sure with the bigger ones, and absolutely with the port ones as well, what happens with scar tissue is when you have an incision, you're opened up into the world. And when you are opened up to the external world, you have a very high chance of getting an infection. That's why you're having surgeries in very sterile environments. And so what the body is very aware of, or what the body definitely doesn't want, is an infection. Because when there's an infection in the body, it means that all hands are on deck. They're trying to combat this infection. Meaning, like, you know, when you're sick and your energy's down, you're not very hungry, your muscles are aching, like everything is being affected by the infection. So the body will be very quick to close up an incision, whether it's an accident or a surgery or whatever. It will close up very quickly. It will close it up in a very kind of irregular fashion and try to bury itself very deep into something that is stable. The only thing that is guaranteed stable in the body is stuff that is very hard, stuff that doesn't move. Bone. That's pretty much a go-to location for all scar tissue to anchor itself down onto the closest bone so that it can completely heal, and it doesn't have that chance of opening back up again, because that's danger bay. We don't want that. The body does not want that. And what is so important about the gallbladder scar is, depending on your digestion, like if you were already really struggling with your digestion, meaning like you were, maybe you were having trouble evacuating, or something was going on where you had a lot of congestion and constipation and like blockages in your bowels, what will happen is and this goes the same with the bladder, but the bladder is kind of too far away from the gallbladder for this example, but I'll just share anyways. If you hold your pee for a long time, like if you're a teacher or if you're so busy and you're on Zoom all day and you can't get a moment, what the body does is the scar tissue kind of recognizes it as a hard object because it's full. It should not be full because you should be having regular movement. Our body's in flux and in flow all the time. But when you're not, the scar tissue will try to like bury itself into there to create an anchor stable point as it heals, as it makes sure that you're good to go for the purse grab and the cupboard grab and the bearing down, all the stuff. And that's the problem. That's a huge problem. That's probably one of the biggest problems that can arise from old gallbladder scars, is that they will kind of suffocate these organs, like really kind of strain and suffocate the gut, like the large and small intestine, depending on how the scar is oriented, how big it is, and all these other factors. So I want you to really consider that when you're thinking about your own gallbladder scar or anyone else that you know, because these things when you work them, when you change these things in your body, they're absolutely revolutionary. If your digestion is off, life is kind of off. When we're not having regular bowel movements or good, well-formed bowel movements, life's a bit off. It affects everything. Nobody's in a good mood when they're, running to the bathroom all the time or when they're not going to the bathroom enough. Everyone's a bit grumpy and uncomfortable. I think that we can all have a little chuckle and agree on that together. So that's what I want you to think about as far as the physical. I'm just going to look into my time here, or my examples. Yeah, so that's all I have really written for the physical, as far as like just little bits and pieces. I hope that all makes sense. If you have any questions about any of that, please let me know, because you may have a scar that's of a different size, of a different quality. I'm going to share one of my favorite gallbladder stories with you, and it's incredibly impactful. It's so moving and so powerful, and I'm really looking forward to just sharing that. And let's share that in this next section here. So this is the energetic piece. So we cannot just be working our scar tissue and expect to be having only physical benefit. There will always be emotional and energetic benefit. Why is that? Because when an event happens, when there's a surgery that happens, we need to be very cognizant. We need to recognize that surgeries are scary. When your health is suffering, and then the game plan is to have a surgery, there's a lot of emotion in that. There needs to be an acknowledgement of that, because that is kind of the reality of it, and each woman will be very different. So whenever we're talking about the energetic and emotional components to scars, I always want you to think about the before the event. So gallbladder removal is a very obvious one. So there's a before the surgery itself. What was the emotion around there? Was there uncertainty? Was there fear? Was there, just incredibly unwell? Like, what was going on in your life? What was happening? Because that quality will be stuck and lodged inside the scar itself. And then there'll be the second phase, which is during the event itself. Whether you were conscious or not during the surgery, your body is still there and still kind of keeping that imprint. So you need to be aware of the during. That's really important, to be just tapping into that, seeing what's there. Maybe right off the hop, you're like, yeah, I know exactly, like as soon as I went in and they put the gas on me, I had an instant moment of just terror. And so you went into the surgery with that. You want to know and you want to remember all of those things. Then there'll be the after. The after for a surgery, for example, could be a whole slew of emotion. There could be all sorts of different things. And it's wrapped up in like your healing process. Like, did you get an infection during it? Did that make you afraid? Did they like maybe have to confirm something? Maybe something didn't go as planned. Were there weird kind of relationship dynamics where you felt unsupported by a loved one? Was there financial stuff going on, like burdens of that sort? Like, what was going on in your life? Because that again will be like all bound up and wound up inside the scar. It's really important that you go through those three kind of stages, or three kind of time frames, when you're thinking about the energetic and emotional components of your scar. Now, the gallbladder itself is a really interesting thing to talk about, an organ to talk about, because the gallbladder in Chinese medicine has a lot of interesting information. I'm going to share just a bit of superficial information about the gallbladder meridian from TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. I'm not a TCM practitioner, but I do find it to be incredibly helpful when we're thinking about Western modern science and pairing it with philosophies and traditions that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. There's a very good reason for why these traditions, like acupuncture, Chinese herbs, Ayurveda, all of these things, there's a reason why they're still around. It's because they're incredibly effective at viewing the person as a whole, as an entire human being, where usually in Western modern medicine, we're kind of only looking at the body. We're looking at the nuts and bolts. And in these older philosophies, these older practices and traditions, looking at the whole human and how it relates and connects with nature, with its environment. It's a much more, eagle-eye view. And the gallbladder, interestingly enough, the channel is on the side of the head. So you have a gallbladder meridian, like an energetic channel from on one side as well as the other. And it's kind of dances around the channel all around the side of the head. So when I mentioned headaches at the beginning, this is potentially one of the reasons why. When I mentioned ear, wow, this could be another thing that you want to think about. It actually comes down the whole side of the body. It comes down the whole side, all the way down the whole leg to the fourth toe. And this is a really interesting area to think about. In Ayurveda and yoga, we call it the side channel. And in both of these traditions, this is an area where it's very common to hold a lot of tension. And in this modern world, we are generally all wound up and tense and jacked up to some degree. Hopefully not all the time. But this is where we hold our tension. And there's a lot of emotional connection to the side channel, to the gallbladder meridian, that is related to really kind of hot, irritated emotion, like anger, like resentment, like irritation, like frustration. These emotions will be the things that we're thinking about when we're relating to the side channel, the gallbladder meridian, in tension. So a lot of the time I have a little joke with some of the people that I teach yoga class, that if you're feeling really grumpy, like really irritated, like if you're really triggered today, you should probably go in and do some side body stretches and start stretching your gallbladder meridian, and there is some truth to that, because that is where that tension is created. And in Chinese medicine, it is related to, the gallbladder meridian is related to or interconnected to the wood element. If you think about wood as just an elemental thing, it is a very kind of fibrotic, dense kind of quality, which is very different than, say, for example, the element of air or wind. So I want you to also think about the rigidness that can come into the side channels, into the gallbladder. And when you have a removal of the organ itself, those channels and those energies will be even more challenged to naturally flow, to naturally move, to maybe even be expressed without judgment, and expressed in a way that isn't hurtful to others or hurtful to ourselves. And so we want to, again, just know about that, because it's an incredibly rich way to look at the body and about the organ itself. And we were just talking about a scar here, and now we're in the side bodies, and we're talking about emotion. So I think it's just such a beautiful way to look and think about the body. Now, from my own personal experience, what I wanted to share with you at the beginning is this story. And this is something that has been consistent. I have seen this again and again and again with my clients. And so I can safely say that this is, I would say that this is a thing. This is what is stored into this gallbladder scar. This is mostly for women who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and I'll tell you why. These women will most likely have a longer scar. And it's because these women, in particular, they had to have had their surgeries when they were very little or very young, under the age of their teenage years or younger. And so why I am saying this is because the gallbladder scar can be stuck in with the qualities of being left in the hospital bed alone without your parents or your family. So back in the day, you know, the women who are 40s and 50s and 60s are saying, yeah, I remember this. Back in the day, you went to the hospital, you had a procedure done, and you stayed overnight, and you weren't allowed to have your mom or your dad or your family stay in the room with you. They weren't allowed to stay in the hospital. And this is a huge deal because what these scars are holding is incredibly high levels of abandonment. And this is, like I said, true in any scar, gallbladder scar, and appendix scars actually in particular, are the ones that hold this energy so strong. So I was working on a woman, I'll never forget it. I was working in a small town, like way up north in Canada, and she had this like really gnarly gallbladder scar. It was spanning quite a large distance, and it had kind of like, it wasn't like something that you would think on the outside, you know, oh, this is a really nice scar, your doctor did a good job. It was more of like one of those ones that was kind of in the body, and there's a lot of pulling and tension and kind of puckering going on. And we started to work the scar, and we started to manually touch the scar, and we started to kind of get into it, and all of a sudden she just started telling this story, this really beautiful story. She was just, you know, it was a really beautiful moment. She was just sharing all this stuff around that time frame of her life, and you could tell it was just like stuff unloading from there. You know, it's not like we were having a deep and meaningful conversation before about, you know, the time when she was 9 years old. It just started to like happen as we were touching the scar. I was touching the scar, and we were just hanging out, and she was talking. And then over time, she started to lean into this. I remember being alone in the hospital. I remember my parents leaving me alone in the hospital. And what came out of this woman after this, like that, what started to open up energetically and emotionally was it was like a hot pocket, like under so much tension that just like exploded out of her, like released an insane amount of tension from her body. And it was all around feeling abandoned by her parents for leaving her in the hospital. How could they, you know, leave her there? That was her, you know, her feeling as a very young girl, which is very valid, very normal. And it was such an emotional kind of hysterics kind of moment that really made me recognize how much energy, how much emotion under tension can be stuck in these scars. It was a very kind of cathartic session where there's a lot of hysteria, and it was so glad. I was very grateful to be there because it was so moving. Like there's just so much movement, so much crying, so much heat coming out of her body. And then after it was all over, there's just such a huge relief that had come over this woman. Like I swear she looked honestly like 15 years younger. It was amazing. Like she had just purged this huge thing out of her body, and it was such an amazing, incredible thing to be witness to, and to be there for, and to help her kind of facilitate that movement up and out. So that, bringing on that's the kind of other emotional, energetic thing, is check on abandonment. Check on that feeling of abandonment. It may be very strong in you if you have a gallbladder removal, regardless of how small or big the scar is. I think it could be there. So let me just check out here. Yeah, so those are the main physical and energetic components that I want you to consider. Just have them in your mind. See where they take you. Remember the before, during, and after of the energy for you. This is all about for you and your scar in your life. And the last piece here that I want to give you is a really important one. So as I say at the start of all of these, we know what to do with it, part of these videos, is I always say you have to do this first step. And because you just heard that story, maybe you understand the impact even more of doing this first step. So the first step is always going to be You have to do 3 things, and it must be done. You cannot skip over it, and you need to take time. It's such a crucial piece. So you're gonna set yourself up in a place where you're comfortable. You're gonna lay down in bed. You're going to sit comfortably, just in your room or wherever you feel most safe and comfortable. And then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make contact with the scar with your hands, with your eyes closed. The element of, or the sense of touch is such a powerful sense. We don't really activate it that much anymore, which is such a shame. When you make contact onto the scar, you will immediately be kind of creating a closed kind of loop. It's immediately like a much more intimate feeling. And this is a very important step to do when we're trying to build a relationship with the scar again and really resolve long-standing stuff that's stuck in the area. So you need to, just with a light touch, maybe your whole palm, just making contact, eyes closed. And then the part 2 and part 3, the 2 other things that I want you to do here, this is the same for every single scar, is number 1, you need to gather information around the physicality of the scar. Okay, so I want you to, does it feel different in some places? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is there altered sensation? Like maybe some places are super sensitive and some places are totally numb. Some places feel like icky and like an aversion. That's normal too. Just touching the scar may make you feel nauseous. Totally fair game as well. So I want you to pick up that as well as like how it feels underneath your hand. Does it feel ropey? Is there like tension? Is there stuckness? Is there like a puckering? Is there something? Can you feel into that, and what does it feel like? So that's the physicality. And then the second part, which from that story you can hear that it's potentially the most important part, is you want to gather the emotion, like the energy that's stuck in there. You want to gather information about it. So you can go through, like I had mentioned, what is the energetic quality or what are the emotions that were present before the surgery, before the gallbladder removal. Sit with that for a bit. Feel into it during, what was going on during and then after. Anything that comes up at all. You want to really just log that and know that, because women don't yet, hoping to change that, but women don't yet recognize the power and the potential that's lodged up in this scar tissue. When I say that, every scar has a story and has the power to transform your well-being, it's this recognition to know that the power that is inside this scar can totally change your life. And that is incredibly transformative, but you also need to approach it with respect, with honor, with some sort of subtlety. And so that is a absolutely a crucial part to this whole scar work. You have to do it as the first phase. No matter what, each scar gets its own one of those. Step 1, 2, 3. And then I want to go into the specific thing that you can do for your gallbladder scar. Because we spoke about gallbladder removals as being, they're heavily related to your muscle system, so heavily related to your abdominals, as well as I spoke about all the kind of hot, fiery, tension building emotions. So we want to lean into that. We want to help resolve that tension. We want to help the muscle tissue come back and start to function effectively 100%. So what you're going to do is definitely not with gallbladder scars, go full tilt and intense on it, because that intensity is very likely lodged in the scar. So we're going to do the opposite and take it down several notches and really just breathe into the scar. Whether it's a longer scar or 3-prong kind of puncture, it doesn't matter. I want you to breathe down into your belly. Okay, so a lot of people who have scars, they'll try to breathe around the scar. Like if you have a scar on your abdomen, like gallbladder scars, you'll try to be really chesty, or you'll breathe a little bit lower. You won't. The nervous system will very likely avoid putting pressure on the scars, because it's like re-putting attention into something that caused you a lot of hurt and a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. But now we want to kind of go into that softly, respectfully, and with just honoring the whole situation, honoring yourself as a person. You want to breathe into that. You want to start walking yourself to, be directly facing some of those challenges and some of those struggles, which is what a transformation really is. So we want to just gently breathe down into the scar. Really feel like we're pushing our breath into the scar. The inhales would be the pushing out. Breath is moving your organs like outwards, taking up more space. And then the exhales are just a soft, relax, letting go of tension, letting go of tension, letting go of tension. That is so key with gallbladder removal scars. Okay, so you're just breathing really smooth. I would love it if you could just take a 5-minute practice. If you only have 2 minutes, do it for 2 minutes. You'll get a huge benefit from that. Lean into and go towards 5. But you're just smoothly, deeply, calmly letting the breath like inflate you in 3 dimensions. So you are breathing heavily into the front of your belly because that's where the scar is. But think about the sides as well. We're talking about the side bodies and tension here for the gallbladder meridian. So think about that as well as the back. Feel like you're inflating in 3D. Okay? Really smooth in and out, 5 minutes. It will be very transformative. It's a really nice way to lean into your scar. And that's my kind of preliminary step for this gallbladder removal. And so if you have any questions about anything that I said, if you want more detail on a specific topic, I would love to dive in there with you. So whether you're watching live now or you're watching the replay, just send a message. Like I said, I see them all, and I would love to be there and support you in the way that I can best. So I'll just stay here for a moment and see if there's any questions at all. Hey Kathleen, thanks for joining live. You're gonna really like this video, so definitely come back and watch it. All right, so thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Tomorrow we have just a special little request. There's many women who have a lot of scars on their body. It's very likely that when you have one scar, you're gonna get more. And if you have one surgery or one incident, there's more likely that you're gonna rack up stuff in your life. And that's okay, that's just kind of how life is, but we need to know that we can work these scars and that we can. So I wanna help guide you into a way of choosing which scar to work with first. There's a lot of complexity to this. I'm actually gonna build it out into like a few day kind of challenge, I think, because there's so much there. But I'm gonna go into that tomorrow. It's at the kind of an odd time. I thought I'd just throw in a different time just for fun. So it's at 9:30 Pacific time tomorrow, Saturday, June 5th. All right, hey Yvonne, nice to have you here too. So I don't see any questions. I will say bye for now, and I will see you tomorrow. All right, bye.